to this month's edition of Blind Dates. If this is the first time you are joining us, I'll just give a brief on what Blind Dates is. So it's a conversation between borders, more or less. So we have a Ghanaian guest and a German guest come together to share their views and thoughts on a selected topic, mainly around popular culture. And so this month we are exploring the topic of cancel culture, and we have two interesting guests to battle it out, I guess. So let me introduce our guest, and then we can get right into the conversation. I would first introduce our Ghanaian guest. He is in the person of Bright Akwe, who is sitting just with me on stage. So he's an artist from Ghana and is a product of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, where he earned a BFA and an MFA in painting and sculpture. His practice is situated in the field of painting, illustration, and street art. He was named recipient of the Kohenia Prize for Ghanaian Contemporary Art in 2016. Akwe's practice has been heavily influenced by Ghanaian artist duo FOKN Boys and the work of Nigerian activist and musician Fela Kuti in how they have made social commentary, and his focus has recently been centered on artistic explorations of pop culture as medium. His work has been shown in group exhibitions in Ghana and abroad, including Cornfields in Accra in 2016, Orderly Disorderly 2017, and his first solo exhibition, Where the Cho Day, in 2018. He has also been involved in organizing art workshops in the northern region of Ghana, collaborating with some development agencies based in Tamale. Bright is currently studying at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology and continues to make work inspired by global popular culture. So that is a bit about Bright, and welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So now let me read the bio of our German guest. And so Jens Bowser is a writer and author in the feature section of a German newspaper. He curates the pop salon at the Deutsches Theater Berlin together with Toby Muller, and is an artistic advisor to the Dano Festival Krems. From 1999 to 2017, he was an editor in the Feuilleton of the Berliner Zeitung. I'm sure I'm murdering these things, so please forgive me. And has also written for O32C magazine, Rolling Stone, and Deutschland Funk Culture, among others. He has written numerous books on culture, theory, and social history, including Pop in Pana, Roma de Genwet, Pop and Populism, on Responsibility in Music, and others. So this is our guest, Jens Bowser. So Jens, welcome and thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Hello from Berlin.
Hello from Accra. So as we do every time we have this conversation, our guests have prepared a short statement on the selected topic. We are exploring the topic of cancel culture, what it is, how it started, how it has evolved, and its impact on society today. And so I'd like to start with you, Jens, if you can share your statement, and then once you are done, we move to Bright, and then we'll start the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. It's a great pleasure, and I'm really curious on the discussion. So I was asked to give a short some thoughts on the meaning of cancel culture to make a start. And to be honest, I have no idea. So maybe you invited the wrong person. We'll see. I'm sorry, but I try to share some thoughts with you anyway. There is no such thing as cancel culture. That's a true sentence. And there is cancel culture that is also a true sentence. So cancel culture exists and doesn't exist at the same time. That is what is so fascinating about it and why it is such a rewarding topic. One can talk about it endlessly without ever coming to a final conclusion. Nevertheless, I'll try one definition now tailored to our current debates in Germany. I think the impression that cancel culture exists is a symptom of a state of affairs in which some people criticize things that have long been taken for granted and which to those critics finally turn out to be problematic, unacceptable, or perhaps even just worthy of discussion. Other people who want everything to stay like it always was react to this kind of critique by complaining that these things they've grown fond now shall be cancelled, censored, banned. One example from Germany. If I look at history correctly, it was now 30 years ago that people of color living in Germany for the first time came up with the request, we don't want to be addressed with the N-word anymore because it's a racist term. And we don't think it's tolerable anymore that there are still theater plays and operas and even movies in which white people mimic black people by putting black paint on their faces, because blackfacing is a racist practice deeply interwoven with the history of slavery, especially in the USA. Those were very few voices in the beginning saying that, because there were still very few people of color who had access to the German media back then in the pre-internet era. But there were instantly a lot of voices saying the entire German cultural heritage is in danger if all books are now banned and cancelled in which black people are called by the N-word. At that time they said, here we have the terror of political correctness. Later, I think around 2010, the term cancel culture was coined. 30 years later, I think most Germans agree, or at least I hope most Germans agree, that the N-word is racist and offensive and shouldn't be used when talking to black people. But we still discuss whether it shouldn't perhaps be left in old novels, or whether blackfacing on the opera stage shouldn't still be tolerable because it's part of the cultural heritage. So many white people in Germany are stubbornly fighting to be allowed to use the N-word, that one gets the feeling that the N-word itself is the cultural heritage they want to keep. So one possible definition of cancel culture is, some people try to decolonize language, certain works of art, the way we treat each other. Other people see this as a ban on their accustomed culture. And there are right-wing media and politicians who accuse anyone who advocates this kind of decolonization of wanting to ban and censor and cancel. For these right-wingers, cancel culture is a phenomenon of an elitist and crazy, wacko and so-called woke post-colonial left. The post-colonial left, on the other hand, says cancel culture doesn't exist.
Recording in progress.
It's just a phenomenon. It's just a phantom of the right. But a second example. I recently joined a conference of German publishers and booksellers on the subject of cancel culture, and some of them told me about their experience. There was a gay bookseller from Hamburg who had also been on the jury for the Deutscher Buchpreis, the most important book prize in Germany. This prize last year went to the debut of a non-binary author, Blutbuch, Bloodbug by Kim de l'Horizon, who tells the coming-of-age story of a non-binary character, including the reflection on how this can be told at all in the language so marked by a binary structure. After the prize was awarded, the Hamburg bookseller said a shitstorm broke out about him on the internet. Regular customers came into his shop, threw the book at his feet and spat on it. You will never see me again if you're promoting this crap. In other words, he was someone to be cancelled for selling a book that told of a sexuality that didn't conform to the conservative norms of heterosexuality. This fits with recurrent campaigns by right-wingers who say our children should not be exposed to gay, lesbian, queer, transsexuality because it indoctrinates them. Books that feature queer sexuality are not for children and not for the general public. To this, many leftists say this is now cancel culture from the right. Most of them were the same people that previously said there is no cancel culture at all. I could give dozens more examples now, and I'm really curious to hear about your experience with the topic. We have ample opportunity to discuss. And what I want to say is cancel culture is the symptom of a time in which familiar cultural practices are being criticized, questioned, renegotiated, and this with a speed and intensity that is historically unprecedented because of the internet, of course. Cancel culture is always what others do, whose opinion you do not share. I've never met so far anyone who says, I practice cancel culture and I am proud of it. Cancel culture only exists in the perception of people who consider a certain form of criticism of their cultural practices or beliefs to be attempts at censorship. This is a phenomenon that can be found in very different political contexts, from left to right. In the two examples I chose, my sympathies are clearly divided. I find it emancipatory to stop writing or saying discriminatory words. I find it reactionary to tell someone that they shouldn't write or speak about certain forms of sexuality. But in many cases, this line between the emancipatory and reactionary cannot be drawn so clearly. In many cases, the impression of cancel culture also arises simply because people talk past each other. I hope that tonight we will succeed not in talking past each other, but with each other.
Thank you very much.
So far.
Let's give a hand. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll hear from Bright and then we'll go right into the conversation.
Okay. So, I also prepared a few notes just to capture my initial thoughts on the topic. And I'm guessing after here we can go into details and share more. But in the age of the internet and information, where mob action can be more virtual than real, you are cancelled. Overtly said or covertly expressed can be thought of as a form of lynching. A digital lynching, however, with potential real-life implications. I personally don't consider this verdict intrinsically positive or negative. On a just day, it has been used to hold public figures to account. I'm not going to name names. However, on a bad day, and for someone like me who makes art like I do, again, I'm going to leave the examples for later. But generally, I think for a space like Ghana where accountability is as profound as the hair on Nana's head, such tools have become necessary to keep some social sanity. More traditional methods of seeking justice have certainly failed to live up to expectation. Take, for example, the very curious case of Honorable Okujeto Ablakwa versus one Reverend Kusibuateng and the National Cathedral Board. There was a very interesting story where a member of parliament detects an oversight with very critical criminal implications and decides to refer the case with all the evidence he has gathered to the SHRAJ, that's the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice. Personally, I was wondering why he'd do that, because there is this sense of distrust between Ghana and general distrust between Ghana and these public institutions that are supposed to hold people to account. So I wonder why he would refer the case to such a body. Anyway. Or we can look at the example of a comedian who made very rapey jokes on the internet, and then suddenly such a character becomes a celebrity pupil teacher and an ambassador for several brands and corporations in the country. Again, we can talk about these examples into details later. But because of the often draconian real-life implications of cancel culture, maybe some mercy could be tempered with this justice. We are human after all, and people have the potential to improve. Although maybe we aren't seeing too many examples yet. No one is perfect or knows it all, and it is still essential to strive to be better versions of ourselves so we may enjoy a more just society. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Bright. So we've heard from our two guests. I'd like to start by.
I just had a very hard time with the audio. I changed places because you might the Wi-Fi better, but I haven't understood too much of what you were telling. I'm sorry, because it was very distorted.
No worries. So can you hear clearly now?
I can hear you better than
You can hear
him
me? Okay.
for some reason.
My voice is cancelled.
Okay, so you heard that. So maybe
let's try. But I'm sorry, I can't react immediately because it was so distorted.
No worries. So maybe you could take. He can take it again.
Just from here now.
Yeah. So he will take it again. Yeah.
Yeah. So my initial thoughts on the topic of cancel culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. From my very Ghanaian perspective. So in the age of the internet and information, where mob action can be more virtual than real, you are cancelled. Overtly said or covertly expressed can be thought of as a form of lynching. A digital lynching, however, with potential real life implications.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally don't consider this verdict intrinsically positive or negative. On a just day, cancel culture has been used to hold public figures to account. And I wasn't going to name names yet, but subsequently we would go into it. And I think on the bad day, for someone like me who makes art, like the kind of art that I make, there are other instances that I think the expression of cancel culture hasn't been entirely positive.
Mm-hmm.
For a space like Ghana, where accountability is as profound as the hair on somebody's head, it's very rare to find the kind of accountability that I think a society like Ghana needs. It has become necessary for tools like cancel culture to become, promoted or even more prominent, because the more traditional methods of seeking this accountability have failed to live up to expectation. And I gave very Ghanaian examples, very Ghanaian recent examples of where some of these more traditional methods of demanding or seeking accountability has failed. For instance, there was a very curious case where a member of parliament cited or discovered certain discrepancies in the disbursement of public funds. It seemed like a very light issue, but I thought it had very critical implications with, identity theft, just with corruption, mismanagement of public funds and the like. And this member of parliament then referred the case, together with all the evidence he had gathered in his investigations, to an institution or a body called the Shraj. That's the